Hi, welcome to another episode of Out of the Blue. I'm Blue, and today we're going to be talking about something that you're probably pretty familiar with and something that is probably completely new to you. We're going to talk about the quest for absolute zero and how that has to do with something called Maxwell's Demon. In science, a big thing that we're trying to do right now is reach as close as we can to absolute zero. As you probably know, we can't actually get to absolute zero because that's when all motion stops and we can't actually stop everything. We can get very, very close to absolute zero, and that's what we're trying to do all the time. One of the closest ways we've gotten to absolute zero is using lasers and coil guns. Now it starts off by using a coil gun that's kind of reversed, so a particle that's shot through it is actually affected by the electromagnetic fields and slows down a ton. As you probably know, the kinetic motion of a particle is related to its temperature, so the slower a particle goes, the colder it is. And that's all we're trying to do, is slow these particles down as much as possible. So it goes through this gun, and the gun slows it down a ton to like 1/10 of a Kelvin above absolute zero. And then we hold it in a particle. But 1/10 of a Kelvin above absolute zero, we've done that, we've been there. We need to get it lower. How we get it lower is by using something called Maxwell's Demon. Maxwell first proposed this thing a couple centuries ago, and we've finally been able to realize it. Maxwell proposed a chamber of particles floating around, already pretty cold, just like the coil gun example. What he proposed was a wall right here with a little gate open at the top. And he proposed some sort of magical creature that would sit right here and could see all of the movements of all of the particles and could decide when he saw a particle coming from this way to open the gate and let it through this way. And when he saw a particle coming from this way, to close the gate and keep it bouncing back this way. That way he could get all of the particles in this chamber to one side of the chamber without increasing its temperature, because they'd all still be going the same velocity because they wouldn't be compressed, they'd just be let through or not let through. Now, for a long time, people didn't know if this was possible. Some people questioned whether it would be a violation of the laws of thermodynamics that say entropy cannot be decreased in the system, because you'd think, you know, this is decreasing entropy. The solution for that is you can keep this happening as long as there's some sort of information being exchanged. Now, information always increases entropy, and that's how this is possible and doesn't violate the basic laws of the universe. We don't kill anything by doing this. Well, we don't have any sort of creature that can see the random motion of particles. That's really impossible. I mean, I don't know anything that could do that. So instead of using a creature, scientists have developed something called a single photon laser beam in combination with sort of energetic wall that is used in much the same way. In this configuration, there's an energetic wall right here that lets particles of a certain energy through, but not particles of a lower energy. Right to the other side of that wall is a single photon laser beam. Now what that does is it excites a particle from a lower energy to a higher energy by exciting the electrons into an upper state. You don't really need to understand how that works, you just need to know that we can use a laser to change the energy of a particle. Once a particle passes through this laser beam, it changes to the higher energy particle. Now it passes through and it can no longer get past this wall because this wall doesn't let it, so it bounces back. A particle from over here passes through this wall, no problem, because it's lower energy. It passes through this laser beam and then it can never bounce back to this side. So doing this, we managed to get all the particles eventually on this side because there are no longer any particles of the lower energy, therefore none of them can bounce to that side. Once we do that, we have everything compressed to one side of the gas chamber without changing the velocity of the particles, so without changing its temperature. After we do that, we can just remove that wall. The particles will expand naturally, and like you probably know from the ideal gas law, their temperature will decrease. Using this method, we've actually cooled gases to 15 millionths of a Kelvin above absolute zero, which is pretty amazing. You might be thinking, that's cool and all, get it? It's actually really important in science that we do this because there are a lot of quantum level things that happen that we have no idea about yet, and the only way to study them is by being able to get particles to these low temperatures so that we can see their behavior without having to take into account the extremely violent motions of them. Also, one of the coolest applications, in my opinion, is that we can use this to test antimatter to see if it reacts to gravity the same way that regular matter does. So antimatter has a mass, just a normal mass. Well, we don't know if it's normal. And we can create antimatter. We do that in large colliders. So if we capture these antimatter things, particles, in a chamber like this Maxwell's Demon chamber, and we cool it to super low temperatures, we can see if the particles will naturally fall due to gravity because they have mass. And we need to see if gravity affects this anti-mass. That way we can figure out stuff about dark matter and dark energy, which I'll provide links for, super unknown things in cosmology and astronomy right now. So there's a lot of stuff we need to figure out still, and this is another really important advancement. So stay loving science, stay cool, stay fresh, and have a nice week.